Good evening. Welcome to the Education and Pupil Services and Finance and Operations Committee virtual meetings for October 27, 2020. During this unprecedented time, while social distancing requirements are in place, the Upper Darby School District needs to continue certain aspects of its business, which includes decisions concerning pandemic planning. For this reason, the Upper Darby School District will continue regularly scheduled school board meetings while pandemic-related restrictions imposed by Governor Wolf and any local authorities are still in place. It is the plan of the school board to hold these meetings with the minimum required departures from normal operating procedures. The Upper Darby School District School Board COVID-19 Special Operating Procedures document outlines expected departures from those normal operating procedures and the policy justification for such departures. At the start of each board committee meeting held while pandemic-related restrictions are in place, the board will review the departures from normal operating procedures as well as their justifications. While social distancing requirements are in place, the Upper Darby School District School Board finds it necessary to hold virtual school board and school board committee meetings to complete required business. These virtual meetings will allow for public viewing and participation. Following practices already in place for regular meetings, all virtual school board meetings, in addition to allowing near real-time public viewing and participation, will be recorded and the recordings made available after the meeting. In order to hold virtual school board meetings, adjustments need to be made following existing board policy. These adjustments have been outlined in the Upper Darby School District School Board COVID-19 Special Operating Procedures. Dr. McGarry, can you please give us some information about participating in tonight's meeting, please? Thank you, sir.
Yes, Board President Brown, thank you. Members of the public are with us this evening. Thank you for your participation. As you know, at this time, the board has made every effort to continue to provide opportunities for community engagement during not only our committee meetings, board meetings, as well as our special voting meetings. Tonight, we have two committee meetings. We will begin with a Curriculum and Instruction Committee meeting, followed Education and Pupil Services, followed by Finance and Operations. And then concluding both those meetings, we'll go into a special voting meeting this evening. If you would like to participate in our committee meetings this evening, please send an email with your name, address, and this is really important that you also provide the agenda item you'd like to comment on, because if you do not have your name, address, or the agenda item, we will not be able to make that part of the record. So again, name, address, and the agenda item you'd like to comment on to committee questions at upperdarbysd.org, or you can phone us at 610-789-7200, extension 2000. Please leave your name, address, and the agenda item you'd like to comment on so that the board can make that part of the record and we can do our best to answer any questions that you have this evening. The board, before taking action on those reports, will allow public comment during the committee meetings. When we close our committee meetings, we'll go into a special meeting. If tonight you would like to comment on the two reports in our special voting meeting, the facilities report or the curriculum and instruction report, please make sure to send an email to board meeting comments at upperdarbysd.org. Again, board meeting comments at upperdarbysd.org. You can also leave a number, your information with the following number, 610-789-7200, extension 2000. Please make sure, if you're commenting on the special voting meeting, that you make sure that you leave your name, address, and the specific report you'd like to comment on this evening before the board takes action. We'll remind you at the conclusion of each report and before we move on this evening. Board President Brown, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McGarry. The meeting of the Education and Pupil Services Committee will please come to order. Roll call, Board Secretary, Mr. Rogers, please.
If you are attending virtually, please state you are present and can hear the proceeding when I call your name. Dr. Haig?
I am present and I can hear the proceedings.
Mr. Desnoyers?
Here.
Mr. Warsavage?
I am present and can hear the proceedings.
Mr. Neal?
I am present and can hear the proceedings.
Mrs. Dawes?
Here.
Mr. Fields?
I am present and I can hear the proceedings.
Mrs. Curry?
I am present and I can hear the proceedings.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Here.
Mr. Brown?
Here. The following motion shall be applicable for tonight's committee and special voting meetings. Policy 003 allows the board to suspend policies or parts of policies when appropriate. Therefore, due to the current ongoing crisis, I make the following motions to suspend language in 2 of the board's policies until the next regularly scheduled meeting. Policy 006.1, which regulates attendance at meetings via electronic communications, I move to suspend the language requiring board members to be present. Specifically, the language would be, a majority of board members shall be physically present at a board meeting when a board member attends through electronic communications. And Policy 006, which governs other requirements of board meetings, I move the suspension of language requiring that those members of the public wishing to participate be present. Specifically, the language in the section titled Public Participation would remove the words that read, present at a board meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please state your name for the record. Anyone abstaining, please state your name for the record. The motion carries. I will now turn over the Education and Pupil Services Committee agenda to co-chair Mrs. Curry.
Thank you, President Brown. Good evening, everyone. We will start the Education and Pupil Services agenda by having, I believe, Mr. Marshallek, or am I wrong? I'm sorry. Go over the agenda items.
That's right, yep. Good evening, everyone. This evening we have 4 agenda items. The first of which is the 2020-2021 phased reopening of schools. This informational item. Dr. Dan McGarry will provide an update on the reopening of schools, some of the obstacles that we are facing, and some of the processes that districts must follow in order to reopen schools and address the COVID-19 pandemic. Agenda item number 2 is the non-Title I school level plans. This will require board action. Dr. Manfrey and Mr. Salerno will provide an overview of the school level plans for our non-Title I schools. Agenda item number 3 is a comprehensive plan timeline update. This is informational only for the public and the board. We'll provide us an update on the extension to the initial planning process that we presented at our last committee meeting that was recently released by the Department of Education. And agenda item number 4 is digital resources. Ms. Christine Kelly will provide an update and on a variety of digital resources that we're seeking to gain approval to move forward with at our tonight's special voting meeting. And again, this is for board action. And that's all the agenda items for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Marshallek. You can begin with agenda item 1, please.
So I'll turn this over to Dr. McGarry, our Superintendent of Schools.
Ms. Curry, thank you. Mr. Marshallek, thank you. Although I'd rather you give this presentation tonight than me. Only kidding. I'm going to try to walk us through this evening kind of the timeline of where we are. As we all know, we've spent a considerable amount of time since March 13th trying to navigate this pandemic. Compliments to the school board of directors, to the administration that's in this room here with me tonight, the building principals, the assistant principals, those who are involved in transportation, our teachers, and obviously you, the community members and the parents, for your patience. What I'm going to go through tonight will further lead us down the path of how we can continue to navigate the uncertainty that is this pandemic and COVID-19. And I want to give us a full picture of the conversations that I'm having with medical experts, conversations from around the county and throughout the county, and talk about all the mitigating factors we have in place in here to open our schools, but what some of the barriers are that still make it very difficult for us to navigate this pandemic and manage things. First, I just want to begin with, since we came out of last school year, from March 13th until the end of the school year, we put a considerable amount of time increasing our technology. Thousands of Chromebooks, over 9,800 Chromebooks we've provided. The school district has taken the responsibility to move to a one-to-one school district, and we can do so now. We have over 2,000 hotspots available to families. We have moved to navigating what are now called learning management systems. We use Schoology here as a school district. I know our parents have had to navigate that. Our students have had to navigate that. Our teachers are learning that. We're learning how to teach synchronously, meaning we're learning how to use technology to teach live instruction. We're having to manage and create new lesson plans on top of teaching synchronously by providing asynchronous work. And we've put a lot on our plates. This community, our teachers, our board, our administration. And I want to say to everybody, I thank all of you for the efforts that you're making to try to move this forward in the right direction. We were originally slated to start the school year in a virtual hybrid model, a combination of two factors. Some students would be at home learning while some students would be in person. Given the space limitations we have as a school district, given the financial limitations that we have as a school district, we had to maximize social distancing to 6 feet, create cohorts, and by doing so, in comparison to a lot of other county schools, our students would be getting less in-person instruction than other school districts, given the size of our school district, the limited space that we have, and quite frankly, the conditions of some of our learning spaces that we know that we've been working so hard to overcome some of these learning spaces that are not really great learning spaces for our students. We were then provided advice prior to Labor Day by the Chester County Health Department that it would be best for us to pause our reopening with 6 feet of social distancing and requiring of masks and cohorting students until we got through Labor Day. We came out of Labor Day and we are seeing a trend where the positivity rate is more favorable for a return to some form of in-person instruction here in the school district in the form of hybrid instruction. Lately, while there seems to be some increase in transmission rates in the Commonwealth, as well as here in Delaware County, we are in conversations with medical experts and other county officials that the transmission rates, while they're increasing and we're learning more about this virus, there is little indication that the transmission from student to teacher or teacher to student in schools is occurring. Why? As we said when we paused to remain virtual, we felt that we wanted to see how these mitigating factors would come into play, how social distancing and requiring of masks and hygiene would make improvements. And what we have found is one of the single greatest, most important aspects is social distancing. Second, are wearing of masks, and running equally as important are washing your hands and proper hygiene. But social distancing still is one of the key elements along with the mask wearing. We came out of Labor Day and we were ready to put all of those mitigating factors in play. Then we decided to open and have a plan to open for some kind of flexible cohort instruction on November the 5th, returning all of our low-incidence students, autistic support, life skills students, students in our multi-disabled program, and kindergarten through 5th grade students in cohorts, 2 cohorts per elementary school in the district at 6 feet of social distancing, requiring of masks. We were then planning on opening November the 9th with our secondary schools. Same concept, cohorting students. The middle schools would have 5 cohorts, the high school would have 3 cohorts, 6 feet of social distancing, enforcing hygiene as you've seen in the videos we've put out, as well as wearing of masks. In recent conversations, as recently as last week with reading the Children's Hospital Policy Lab report, in conversations with doctors and other professionals, there seems to be still encouraging news that opening schools in a flexible cohorted methodology is working, that school districts that are in session, that are following these protocols, mask wearing, social distancing, and proper hygiene, are seeing, as the experts are telling us, again, limited to no, if anything, somewhat rare, transmission of student to student or student to teacher while school is in session, because we are enforcing 6 feet of social, we public educators are enforcing the highest mitigating factors, 6 feet of social distancing, the mask wearing, and the proper hygiene. The behaviors outside of school are the #1 obstacle to returning students to school. And I'm going to walk you through, while I tell you how positive it is that schools can open, one of the top issues are student behaviors outside of school, how those student behaviors make their way into school. If you're reading recent newspaper articles, and I'm not going to name school districts, but school districts who have run into problems are not running into problems because it's behaviors in school, it's outside of school behaviors, where we're breaking down our social distancing, we're not wearing our masks, we're not following these proper protocols, And as a result, there sadly have been times when students were sent to school sick, should not have been, or even some of the adults that are staff are not following proper protocols, and as a result, it puts school districts in a difficult position. So I want to walk you through a couple factors that come into play with trying to reopen schools. One of them, as we all know, is the Family First Coronavirus Act, Relief Act. This is a process that allows those, like our employees in a school district, because of this pandemic, to, whether it's for childcare issues or taking care of somebody, that they can have some financial support and be able to stay out for a period of time. It's essentially an extended FMLA, but under this pandemic, it's been provided an extension above and beyond that. That ends at this point in time on December 31st. There's also what is known as the ADA. So we want to make sure that we are providing accommodations to anybody with disabilities, staff that have disabilities, with the proper accommodations. Things like air conditioning or the need for plexiglass. We have some staff who have diabetes or medical conditions that coronavirus impacts them more seriously than others. In these two categories alone at this point in time, we have close to 50 staff members who will not be able to return for in-person instruction in the school district. That's 50 teachers that need further support. And originally we felt like we could try to navigate that by trying to provide maybe paraprofessionals or someone to sit in the classroom and be a classroom proctor. Right now, financially, we have not received some additional CARES funding that we thought we were going to receive. Just for 50 paraprofessionals alone, that's over $1.2 million that we do not have in our budget that would require those supports to be in the building while we allow the teachers that are out on FFCRA until the 31st of December, and teachers that need those accommodations, those ADA accommodations, to be able to teach from home to students in school. When we add to the fact that right now we have, on average, and this is kind of actually positive, this number that I'm going to give to you, we average right now about 38 teachers out a day. So on top of the 50 teachers that are out, we have an additional 38 teachers that are out. When we add to other mitigating factors, we have over 30 teachers or staff that have to take what is known as intermittent FFCRA. I'm going to talk about that now for a second for the board and the public. You are provided up to 10 days sick time. That does not count against your sick time here in the district. It does not count as your contribution to PSERS, meaning the district does not pull out PSERS contributions for your retirement, and those 10 days don't go toward your retirement. But FFCRA provides you 10 days. Those 10 days can be used for if you have a child who has to quarantine for 10 days or 14 days, and you have to take care of them under FFCRA. If it's for 2 weeks or 14 days, you can go out on FFCRA and take care of your child. We're over 30 staff on a given week and growing that need to go out for 10, 14, in some cases almost a month for quarantining reasons. And I'll give you a hypothetical, an example. If I'm a single parent and I have a child who has symptoms in 2 columns that I'll show you in a little bit, that child will have to stay home. The child will have to stay home for potentially 10 days. If after a couple of days the child is showing more symptoms, has a COVID test, and turns out to be COVID positive, as a staff member, you now have to go out for another 10 to 14 days. If you then test positive while you're out, I hope that's not me. Sorry for a second. My keys in my pocket. No, that wasn't me. Sorry, there's a car alarm going off in the parking lot. So we have teachers who have to take care of a loved one or a child, and as a result, we're well over 30 and growing teachers. Of all of these, the Family First Coronavirus Relief Act out until the 31st, the ADA accommodations, the most alarming and growing of all of these are the intermittent FFCRA issues. teachers or staff that have to go out and take care of a loved one because of someone who is sick or presumptive or actually positive for COVID-19. That leaves us with a significant staffing issue here in the school district. And again, the issue is the virus. So I want to be crystal clear here tonight that I think, for all school districts that are navigating it, and this is just teaching staff, I could go into what the impacts would be on transportation and everything else. If we add the increasing numbers, it becomes a situation where we're struggling to cover these classes. One of the things that I'd promised the board, I promised the parents, although tonight some might not agree, and the staff, is that social and emotional learning is important, but the relationship with the teacher that's in front of those students is equally as important in establishing that social and emotional learning. We have also some technical teachers, teachers who are in business, teachers who are in art, teachers who teach a foreign language. Fewer and fewer people are coming out with degrees in those areas. So if we have a teacher who teaches a foreign language, who teaches a specialized art class, who teaches a business class, and they fall into one of these categories, and they can't teach those students, we would then essentially be putting a teacher covering a class with students that are not qualified to teach them in that subject area, collapsing classrooms and putting more students in a teacher's classroom, which, by the way, was an issue prior to the pandemic, the additional coverages that we had to face. And then potentially closing or collapsing courses just to bring students in on a rotating basis. If we had enough staff and we had some paraprofessionals to pull this off, and we could keep the right teacher in front of the students while we did this, I think the opportunity to provide the social and emotional learning that we talked about was a priority, but it's not a priority if we are bringing students in and the teacher that they were used to working with is no longer that same teacher, and the content that the students needed to get was being delivered by somebody who wasn't certified or qualified to deliver that instruction. So taking this all into consideration, and I could tell you that we've had hours and hours of conversations, even up till coming here tonight. The medical guidance is working when schools can open. 6 feet of social distancing is working. The wearing of masks, it's working. The hygiene and the protocols are working. The issues are our behaviors, and I mean human beings' behaviors, outside of school that make their way into school. And then when we have staff who didn't ask for this virus, and we have individuals who have health risks walking into that, there is concern that they have of a life or death situation. While there's not transmission in school that we don't see that, we still have staff who feel unsafe to return to school. Those factors are significant factors. I don't know that I can justify bringing students back in and on a regular basis have close to 50 to 90 teachers uncovered a day. So we're talking on average 50 to 90 teachers, based on the data that we have right now, that we would have to collapse classes, add students to classrooms, or spend between $1.3 to $2 million on paraprofessionals to sit in rooms to cover these classes. We're not giving up hope to try to open schools and to bring students in, but right now, we are struggling with the staffing ramifications that we're facing. The outside behaviors are the most significant issue that we're facing, and I promised my colleagues that I would emphasize that again tonight. And I just want to walk the board through and the public through. These are public documents that are on the screen. Hopefully you can see them. I'm just going to walk you through these flow charts that, again, compliments to Frank Salerno, Dr. Manfrey, Mr. Marshallak, Mr. Puglisi, the high school principals, the middle school and elementary school principals. They're dealing with these flow charts every single day. But these are some scenarios that I want to walk you through that we have to face. These are just flow charts of the screening that has to take place. And as other school districts are opening in Chester County and Delaware County, the Chester County Health Department, in my opinion, who's been doing a fabulous job supporting this county and the schools. They've been doing a wonderful job. We have a young woman named Gianna that works with us. She's been outstanding. They're now becoming overwhelmed too, because the number of schools that are opening and the number of phone calls that are coming into play, that now school districts have to do their own, or a lot of their own, contact tracing. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So Ms. Curry and Ms. Mitchell hold me to coming back to contact tracing, if you don't mind. So on this flow chart right now, it just takes you through, how do you screen individually in school? What do you do if it's a yes? What do you do if it's a no? The key box for me is the one that says identify close contacts to send home. That box is a big box, and that's where we spend a lot of time about asking, were you at 6 feet? Were you at this feet? How did you have a mask on? If you recall, a couple months ago, if you had your mask on, you were in a good position. If you were at 6 feet and a mask on, you were in a good situation. I don't know if everybody's kept up with it, but we certainly have. The recent guidance is 15 minutes cumulative over days, not just in 1 minute, one setting, but 15 minutes throughout a day, in a 24-hour period, or 15 minutes over 2 days. If someone you are around has these symptoms or is COVID, you have to go out, even if it's a 15-minute situation now. That is also increasing the number of staff that we have to now contact trace and then find out what's going on. The key in this box, this one that says identify close contacts to send home, is that 15 minutes of the ill individual, regardless of face covering on campus, and move to school's designated quarantine room, contact the family, provide written guidance. We begin this quarantine process. What's happening outside of school is whether students are involved in youth organizations and they might not be following the same protocols that we are in school, we now are finding that because of a family member that the staff have to quarantine for 10, 14, or more days. These are just, again, I'm going to go through these flow charts for you, and they talk about, the symptom screening again, presenting, again, the close contacts. When you get to that yes area, you have to do a lot of work and talk about how you communicate, who you quarantine. This talks about quarantining a class, a cohort, or staff. Here's another one, when it's a positive test. Positive test results in individuals identifying who were 6 and 15 minutes of the individual, quarantining the room, quarantining staff. Again, the flow charts continue to walk us through just how complicated each scenario is that we have to process through on a regular basis here in the school district. One more. It should be on the screen share with you guys. Again, just showing the flow charts. They're on our website. They're public. We provided these to the public in the past. One of the key areas, too, is that we're asking individuals, staff and students, to self-screen. So if they are showing symptoms in Group A or Group B, these individuals have to stay at home. Again, we're seeing an increase in the number of staff that may have to quarantine for one reason or another. I also wanted to provide the public information regarding just instructions for individuals with close contact, and this is the contact tracing. Whenever we call the health department for information on contact tracing, it used to be that we would contact the health department, send the report. They would then contact the individual who may have COVID or may be symptomatic or around somebody who had COVID, and the health department was doing contact tracing. Now the school districts are having to do a lot of work helping the health department find out who was involved or who was around, and then so we can contact to do the contact tracing. The reason why the contact tracing is so important is that it tells us who was around specific individuals, for how long, were they wearing masks, were they following the protocols, and then that will lead us to the quarantining process that comes into play. So as you see, we're presenting tonight is that returning to school, individuals must stay home for 14 days after their last contact with a person who has COVID-19. Even if you test negative for COVID-19 or feel healthy, you must stay home quarantined. Quarantine guidance is important to follow because symptoms may appear 2 to 14 days after exposure. So we're having a number of staff who have to quarantine for a number of days. We're not even talking about students at this point in time because we don't have students returning to our schools. The impact is what we're having is in regard to staff. So again, we are in a situation tonight where we're still working through our process to try to staff the schools the best way that we can, but I would be rushing us to return students for in-person instruction and interrupting the more consistent program they're getting right now if I can't provide the proper staffing in our schools. So it is upsetting to me. I would like to be able to bring students back for in-person instruction. I believe that there is a social and emotional component that's important. But when I running right next to that and intersecting that, how important it is that these teachers maintain that relationship that they have with students and not interrupt that instruction. But they're both important, and I don't think it's wise of me to shut down classes, collapse classes potentially, add more burden onto our teachers to cover classes than they already cover. You know, this speaks to the teacher shortage, the underfunding of public schools. I'm not going to use the bully pulpit for that tonight, but that's clear that the schools are underfunded. It speaks to our facilities needs. But until we get more support and more staffing support, I think it's going to be difficult for us to bring students back in right now, especially when we're seeing the potential for more transmission. Now, what's interesting is in the data, the increase in community transmission, as we see that the cases are going up, it's still among 20 to 29-year-olds recently. And when we see an uptick in some of the cases, the guidance that we're getting is that might not mean schools have to go virtual or they can't open, because the data now they're tracking it is tracking where it's happening. Is it in a nursing home? Is it because they've recently tested members in the prison and they're seeing an uptick in those areas? So the data, the positivity rate, while it might go up, if it's not going up as a result of schools, if it's not going up in those age groups, school districts are still being told, medically advised, to continue to try to open. Many, many school districts are struggling with staffing. Staffing will continue to be the #1 issue. It is not, and I want to be clear tonight, it is not the protocols that prevent us from opening. It is not the technology preventing us from opening. It's our ability to keep our schools staffed appropriately that continues to be a difficult aspect to manage. And the virus presents that issue. And I think we have to continue to keep that in mind, that I think everybody wants to work, they want to teach, they want to do the best that they can, but the virus is creating many obstacles for us. With that said, my advice tonight to the board and my guidance to the team will be, and this will go out tomorrow, is that we will remain in a virtual setting. We will be bringing back students in kindergarten through 12th grade that are in our low incidence programs, as we promised we would. We're going to work with those teachers and those students and those parents that are willing to bring their students into school, students in our life skills program, our autistic support program, and our multi-disabled students. We will begin to bring those students back for in-person instruction. And then we'll continue to look at opportunities and ways for us to bring students back in a cohorted fashion. We'll continue to provide updates to the board and the public. I know this is probably not a popular decision. I own that. I take responsibility for that. But I think I'm trying to manage the best that I can the teachers that are in these FFCRA categories and ADA categories, that if this virus did not present, they'd be in our schools teaching our kids. The issue is, you know, they have outside factors that are influencing their decisions. And I don't want this pandemic to be what I'm seeing across the country. People leave the profession. Teachers saying, you know, I'm going to quit education because of this. And I certainly don't want to contribute to what I think is one of the most important services in the country, which is public education. One plug I'd like to make to community members, if you're interested in being someone who would like to be in one of our classrooms paid with your clearances to sit in these classrooms so we can accommodate these teachers who can teach from home to students in the classroom. We have the technology to pull that off, but we need adults that are willing to come in with their clearances. We would pay that staff to come in to be in these classrooms so that these teachers can provide this instruction. We're going to continue to do that. Also, anybody who right now might be out of work but has a college degree and is interested in maybe working in math, subject area, and getting involved in education, we want you to come and try to talk to me, Dr. Council, Dr. Manfrey, Mr. Salerno. We're constantly recruiting. I think this pandemic is really forcing a new way of getting people into the profession of teaching and learning. As some individuals, their world is collapsing because of this pandemic, there's an opportunity to be employed into work here in the Upper Darby School District as we navigate this pandemic. So we'll provide that guidance and that training. You can reach out to us, but at this point in time, we believe that the staff that we have is best served remaining virtual so that we don't have to disrupt as much of the classroom experience that we have. It's heartbreaking to say that, but that's where we are. I'll open it up to any questions from the board.
Thank you, Dr. McGarry. I appreciate the detailed information that you provided the board and the public this evening. There are some board members with questions at this time. It looks like the first board member that has a question is Board Member David Neal, and then Board Member War Savage.
Thank you, Ms. Curry, and thank you, Dr. McGarry, for taking the time to explain the reasoning and the facts behind your decision. And I appreciate you bringing back our low incidence children in our special education programs. As a spent time in special education for the majority of my career in education. I know that they're the most vulnerable in these sort of situations. But students outside of those low incidence classrooms, so children with IEPs that we may have identified as needing or that have complex needs and that really do need to come in maybe and be in person, whether at a sort of like accessing the Zoom sessions in a school classroom. That way they're in this setting. Has the administration looked into possibly bringing in students with complex needs that don't fit the criteria of the low incidence self-contained classrooms?
Yes, we are in constant conversations about how we can expand this, and I appreciate the question, Mr. Neal. I know, being a teacher yourself, you know how important that is. Yes, we are going to continue to navigate the best way that we can. What's important to understand, too, is we include as many students as we can in the general education program. So a lot of those students are getting instruction, whether it's from the math teacher or the science teacher or the social studies teacher in the general content area. But we will certainly continue to look at ways to provide those services for those students as we expand this program. Our ultimate goal, to your main question, is to try to bring in as many students as we can that are in needy situations as possible. We are continuing to run. We have almost 60 students whose parents are taking us up on our essential workers program. So we have students that are in schools right now. I want to point that out. One of the videos that we just put out about our plan to reopen schools has students in classrooms with computers and headphones. I want to be crystal clear that when we reopen school for in-person learning, students will not be sitting with headphones on and computers. They just happen to be in the video that took place, because those students are students that are coming in, sitting in a classroom right now, engaged in direct instruction with a teacher that's teaching from a classroom as part of our essential workers program. So to your main question, yes, we'll continue to look at ways to be able to provide those accommodations to students.
Okay, thank you, Dr. McGarry.
If I could just add to David's other question, we have done, almost 200 home visits also, checking on students, knocking on doors. High school alone, we've done on 186 home visits to try to engage with students and families. To David's question about making sure we're engaging with families and connecting, I want to compliment Wendy Elgart and the social workers and the guidance department and our principals in our schools for doing that.
Thank you, Dr. McGarry. I believe it's Board Member Damian War Savage next.
Thank you, Mrs. Curry, and thank you, Dr. McGarry, for that presentation. As one of the board members who had voted to move forward in the hybrid model a couple of weeks ago, I was really encouraged and excited to see all the planning behind getting all of our I's dotted and T's crossed, all of the promotional videos, welcoming everyone back, and all the precautions that we were taking. And in your remarks this evening, I was very pleased to hear the proven results of following proper protocol, following proper procedure, best practice to keep those incident rates not at absolute zero, because that's not realistic expectation, but as low as possible. And everyone throughout the entire district wants to make sure that we bring all of our faculty and our young people back in as safe an environment as possible. And to that end, Dr. McGarry, could you just reiterate to the district family just some of the easy things that they can keep in mind in their daily lives to make sure that they keep the spread of the virus down, so that we can bring our students back for in-person instruction faster? Thank you.
Sure, Mr. Warsavage, not a problem. I think, again, this is holiday time is coming up again. And one of the conversations we were having with the doctors and the medical experts, and it's not, not that it's not out there already publicly, but there's concern as the college and universities come back from break with the age group of 20 to 29, that we could anticipate, because that age group seems to be the age group where a lot of the concerns are happening. We all know what it was like to be 20 to 29, by the way. You think you're invincible. And I think we have to talk to people and families that, the masks are very important. The social distancing is very important. So when we get into the holidays, there's even talk about having families try to get their own COVID testing if they're going to have a family gathering, to make sure that they're aware of what they're getting into. That's the reality of what we're up against right now. So all I can ask of families will be to continue to have proper hygiene, continue to make sure that your family bubble is your nucleus, whoever you're close with, and you're aware of that. If you're engaging in outside youth programs and sports, make sure that the masks and the washing of the hands and the protocols are in place. The way we get back to normal is if we follow those procedures. Social distancing continues to be one of the top factors, as well as wearing that mask. And to make light of that, to make light of not wearing a mask, I think does us a disservice. I think we have to continue to really, really be on top of how important that is, to remind people that, it's not just your own health, it's the health of other people. And if we want to get our businesses up and running, and we want to get our kids back in school, the way that we do that, the fastest way, is to limit the number of positivity, the number of cases that are there. We're close to 5% again. We were down to, 2 point something and then 3, and now we're getting close to 5. So we have to work on our outside behaviors.
I did want to acknowledge all of our teachers who are doing extraordinary things with our students at home on their computers. But I did want to ask Dr. McGarry, if parents are struggling with their students accessing curriculum, especially our youngest students, I'm thinking kindergarten, first and second, where our students are really struggling to learn to read in this difficult situation that we're in. Who should they contact first? Can you just sort of give me an idea of or the community really? Who should they go to if they're really struggling with their students at home?
Yeah, I mean, the most realistic process would be to engage with your teacher, and then your building level principal. And on a higher level, the school district is coming out with videos. I know Ms. Kelly, we put videos together. They'll be coming out shortly on working with how to work on reading at home and some of the programs that we have. They'll be coming out very soon. We have a whole YouTube channel that we were putting together with Ms. Buford, dedicated. That's coming out, I think, probably, it's up already, right? Yeah, so we have a whole YouTube channel that we'll be pushing out again on social media on all these skills. Look, I want to be clear about something. I'm as disappointed and upset and concerned as a parent myself about what this is like for kids. And if I could make it go away and get back to where we were, I would. And I know that there's a lot of upset. We'll take responsibility for that and we'll handle that. It's not the board of school directors who are not opening schools. It's the administration who's trying to create a plan, and right now staffing that plan is difficult. So it's on me as a superintendent to try to open schools the safest way that we can. One of the things we're going to have to do, Ms. Mitchell, is really look at the fact that while the school year ends in June, if we get out of the spring and things are, less stressful, We're going to have to look at a robust summer school. Is that unfortunate? And we're talking about summer when kids might need a break? Yeah, but if we can look at way they're using the technology to do things over the summer with kids to build some of those skills, the school district is going to have to reinvent itself and not look at August to June and then take a break anymore, unfortunately for us. We're going to have to look at the kids and say, we got to catch you up and put even a more robust summer program in or programs over the break and really think about how we're going to navigate this. That's our responsibility. That's our commitment to the parents and the families and the kids in the school district. It's not lost on us. Ed Marshalak taught first grade. I was his principal. He knows how important it was. I remember the first time my kids learned how to read, how emotional I got, that I felt good, that, oh my gosh, it's so cool to see that happen. We're aware of how important that is, and we're going to be in this with this community to navigate it. And if it means extending the school year and whatever resources we have to put forward, we're going to. But we got to be in this together, and if parents need our help, communicate with us. And we'll be there to support them.
Thank you for your sincere efforts. I know this is a really difficult time. We'll all get through it together.
Thank you, Vice President Mitchell. I believe School Board Member Donald Fields has a comment.
Thank you, Director Curry. Dr. McGarry, I just wanted to disagree with your comment that it's on you and the administration. As I said before, it's COVID. It's COVID, it's COVID, and I'll say it again, it's COVID. It's also the fact that we don't have enough buildings. I was trying to find the right scenario to compare our current situation to. I thought maybe an oil crisis or a power outage might be appropriate. And I don't want to use overly dramatic language, but what we're living with really does compare to a war. Think about it. We can't go wherever we want. We can't gather in large groups. Many of our day-to-day activities that would provide a sense of normalcy to our lives are not available to us. And we're all worried about our families and our friends, all of us. And a lot of us, at the very least, know somebody that's been touched by this virus. And so it's going to take from everyone patience and compassion and empathy and understanding. I really do appreciate the concerns of the staff, and these schools don't function without them. And so we have to take care of our staff, right, so that we have staff for the future. Thank you, Dr. McGarry. Thank you to all the administrators and our teachers.
Thank you, Mr. Fields. Ms. Curry, if I can, I apologize. There's one pretty important factor that I have to update the board and the public regarding schools and state requirements. Can I continue?
Please, Dr. McGarry.
Thank you. I forgot, as Mr. Fields talked about how important this is and how difficult it's going to be to continue to manage. The Commonwealth and the federal government have not relieved public schools of their requirements. So we are still going to expect teachers to work from the buildings. We still have to give state tests. The first wave of Keystone exams begin here at the high school in December. So we still have to give all in-person state testing. There is no virtual test. It's only in person. There is no relief from the state testing. So I think it's important. I know that we have a lot of viewers tonight, and I know there's probably the phone call I'm going to get tomorrow is some anger from people that they think they should be able to work from home. But we can't. We need staff in our schools still, and we still have to give state testing to our students. And we were told just last week, there will not be relief at this time from any state testing for our students.
That vexes me. That hurts my head that we're still obligated to do standardized testing just based on our sheer size. I mean, we're larger than the average district, and the number of kids that we have to filter through for state testing, that poses incredible challenges for our administrators. And we're also obligated to keep everybody safe and social distancing and things like that, but we still have to do state testing. So, I mean, are we getting any consideration for how much time it will take to administer the state testing based on the number of students that we have to test?
Sure, Board President Brown, the relief that they've given is that they've made these Uber windows. So the window now goes, because there's graduation requirements and there's still students that take tests at the end of Keystone exams at the end of a course, 9th graders, 10th graders, or depending on when you take the course. I think the window now has been open from December until February-ish, March. That's just for the winter wave. That's really not, no offense if PDE or anybody is listening. That's, to Mr. Brown's question, that's not really relief for Upper Darby, because Upper Darby has hundreds of students, 900 students at a clip, that will have to take one wave, they call it wave, in the winter. Then there's a spring wave. So again, I appreciate you bringing it up, I should have. No, there's really not much flexibility. In fact, I think just how complex this is, it's going to further interrupt the day-to-day operations of teaching and learning in the schools, and trying to convince parents. Right now, we have 1,500 high school students that have opted to remain virtual. 1,500 high school students who want to remain virtual. So we have to tell those parents that those kids have to come in and take state tests. If they don't take the state test, it's going to hurt the school district's overall rating, because really opting out of the state test, you can't really do that. So yes, it's tremendously complicated, far more complicated here. Again, compliments to Mrs. Simone and Dr. Manfrey in the high school. I think it was the second day back with staff in October, we had to administer the PSAT to our 10th graders and bring them in cohorts. And that was a tremendous undertaking to bring students in to do the PSAT, to the point where I think we had fewer students than ever before come in to take the test because of this pandemic. But we have to navigate this again from, I would say, from December all the way through until end of March, April, we'll be administering tests.
And Dr. McGarry, I just want to remind everybody that we will be administering the test to 2 different waves of students. We still have to administer the test to the students who should have taken or who were scheduled to take the test last year and were unable to do that due to the pandemic. And we have this year's kids who are taking Keystone-related courses who have to take the test. So it's a somewhat of a double burden on school districts to administer the Keystone this year.
Thank you, Dr. Manfrey. I know Vice President Mitchell has something to say. I just want to remind everybody who's listening, the public, that this, as President Brown said, is a bit disgraceful, especially when we have our children who are just trying to get the basic needs covered in their basic everyday educational services. And so I would ask people to contact their legislators, make phone calls on behalf as constituents to find out why we are being made to endure this. This doesn't feel like a very equitable lens for our children at this time, especially with everything that's going on. And there's not going to be a true assessment of what children can do at this time with everything that they are enduring with the type of education that we're able to provide them right now. So I know Vice President Mitchell would like to say something. I just wanted to make that comment before we went forward. Thank you.
Just in a normal year, our high school students especially lose a ton of instructional time with the 3 testing windows for the Keystone exams. And Dr. Manfrey, if you could just remind me again, I know I asked at the last meeting, but I think it's important for the public to understand the students who are not taking the Keystone exams, they have to do asynchronous work during that time. Could you just enlighten the...
In order to maintain that 6 feet that Dr. McGarry talked about being so important, we will be asking the other students who are not in Keystone-related courses or testing to participate in asynchronous instruction those days, yes.
So on those days, those students that are not taking the test will not receive live instruction. This is the same thing that happens in a normal year, except it seems like it would be extended. And that's just not fair. So if you are calling your legislators, I think one of the things that they are missing is how much instructional time is lost in any given year for state testing, and that just shouldn't be in a 180-day schedule.
Thank you, Vice President Mitchell. Do I have any other comments from the board at this time on agenda item 1? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Dr. McGarry, for the detailed explanation about the reopening of schools. And I hope that everyone can take this information and do with it the best that they can to advocate, continue to advocate for their children and for the community here in Upper Darby. We would like to move on to agenda item number 2 at this time we have to move on, but just I hope everybody can digest this. And again, if people have questions and need questions answered, we are here for you. Thank you.
Okay, so agenda item number 2 is a presentation by Mr. Salerno and Dr. Manfrey, our directors of elementary and secondary education, on the non-Title I school level plans. And again, these are for board action tonight. So I'll turn over to Mr. Salerno at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Marshallek, and good evening, everyone. As Mr. Marshallek mentioned, Dr. Manfrey and I are going to give a brief overview of the Future Ready Comprehensive Planning Portal tool that was used to develop the plans for our non-Title I schools. I did a very similar presentation to the public just about a month ago or so, and that was for our Title I elementary schools. So some of this information will look familiar. I'm not going to go into great detail and bore you with baseball analogies about how we move kids using PVAS. Well, I know that you all found that very interesting. I'm going to spare you that this evening, but we are going to overview 3 plans at the elementary level and 2 at the secondary level. An important note, the schools that I will be featuring this evening are Primus, Garrettford, and Aronimink, and that is only 3 of our 4 non-Title I elementary schools. Hillcrest Elementary School, we were very excited to announce the addition of Danny McEady, the new principal of Hillcrest Elementary School. We thought it only fair, however, as Mr. McEady has been brought up to speed very quickly at Hillcrest and has really been working tremendously hard, especially through the pandemic. Him and his team are going to take an additional month of planning and preparation to make sure they present the best possible plan they can to the board and to the public, and make sure that it's done appropriately and with the input of all the stakeholders in the Hillcrest community. So I will be back to present the Hillcrest plan, specifically just that one, during next month's committee meeting. Just a quick overview again of the new online planning tool. We'll go through some school data trends and some next steps. Just as a review, the Future Ready Comprehensive Planning Portal, or the FRCPP, yet another educational acronym that we can throw in the mix, is a brand new tool that just came out over the summer, and it's our expectation under Dr. McGarry's leadership to make sure that we have not just our Title I schools or our designated schools, meaning our ATSI or TSI designated schools, but all of the schools throughout the district. The expectation is that they have a planning team at the school level, at the building level, and they are developing and keeping close track of and monitoring and amending their school level plans annually. So as a result of that, it is our district's expectation, not the expectation of the state or the local IU. It is Upper Darby School District's expectation that we have even our non-title schools completing this exercise every year. As a result, the school level teams, through the new planning portal, the Future Ready Comprehensive Planning Portal, again, are really kind of directed to go to the Future Ready PA Index indicators. And I've highlighted those once again on the screen. They include the state assessment measures, the on-track measures, and the college and career measures. In a review of this data, this is really the springboard that allows the school level planning teams to review the data, to analyze it, and then to build some goals, some action steps, professional development needs around this information. Additionally, although the tool really does guide you in the direction of the Future Ready PA Index, We do go into PVAS and look directly at the school-specific, teacher-specific, and student-specific PVAS data, as well as other tools, including local assessment benchmarks, such as the Measure of Academic Progress, or MAP. So again, as a review, and this pertains to the secondary and elementary schools, but this is, my focus here for these three schools is the elementary trends that we're seeing in terms of student growth or strengths. The schools are really doing a nice job overall. Really, we can say this for all of our schools, of meeting or exceeding the annual growth expectations in one or more of the tested subject areas, math, ELA, and science. So this is a trend that you can see on the left-hand side regarding the state assessment measure. This is public information on the Future Ready PA Index dashboard. You will see that, almost to a school, you have the blue arrows pointing up, meaning that we're exceeding the annual growth expectations and interim targets, and in comparison, the arrow pointing up means in comparison to the prior year of testing data, we're trending in a positive direction. Further examples of that for the three schools specifically that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. Here is a look at the dashboard for Aronimink, Primus, and Garrettford. Again, this is indicating that with respect to growth, pulled directly from the PVAS measures, these three schools in the area of math highlighted here have academic growth scores that are above what is expected, and as you can see, also above the statewide average growth score. And that's why you see the indication here in blue. Important note, obviously, we did not take the PSSAs last year because of the mandatory shutdown. So we are looking at data that is a little bit out of date, but that we can still use in terms of making projections for our current fifth grade students and making sure that the teachers that have those students sitting in front of them in a virtual setting know what these projections are, can use these projections to monitor the students' progress and make sure they are on the right track on that trajectory towards proficiency. Here's the same measure, but not looking at math, instead looking at English language arts. And you can see that both Aronimink and Primus, again, exceeded the annual growth expectation and exceeded the interim targets with the academic growth scores. Garrettford came in at green, still right on par with the statewide average growth score at 75, though. But that green, while we typically associate green as good, to be perfectly honest, we need to make sure that we're not just, green means that we're maintaining 1 year's worth of growth. It's really important for us in Upper Darby School District, and we've had this conversation many times, that we're not just maintaining 1 year's worth of growth. I promised I wouldn't go back to that baseball analogy, but I'm going to just for a second, because if you recall, as I know everyone does, the illustration that I had up, if you have a student who is starting on first base, maybe just getting out of the batter's box, and has a not so great level of achievement, if they are just maintaining 1 year's worth of growth, that means that they're not rounding the bases as they should. They're always going to kind of stay there on first base or halfway between first and second base. So it's really important that we have students that are exceeding that annual growth expectation, because as you can see in the charts to follow here, our achievement, quite honestly, isn't where it needs to be. And as a result of that, it's really important that the PVAS growth is demonstrating that our students are exceeding that growth expectation. Again, going back to that, this is the areas for growth. And you can see that the trends for all three of these schools and across the elementary schools in general, I've highlighted here that percentage of students scoring proficient or advanced in ELA and math is not where it needs to be. Now, this chart represents that for this particular school, that it is red, meaning that we are not meeting the interim targets for student achievement for the students scoring proficient or advanced in math and ELA. But we're trending in a better direction when compared to the prior cohort of students who took the state assessments. But when we take a closer look here at the Future Ready Index data, same charts, but showing a different data set here, because this is now measuring students overall proficient or advanced in mathematics for those three same schools. And you can see while Aronimink, Primus, and Garrettford for mathematics were beating the projected targets for growth. In 2 of the 3 cases, we are not meeting the interim goal or improvement targets in mathematics. And you can see here, it does give a good visual comparison of the statewide average. So you can see the statewide average isn't great to begin with. We're looking at a little over 45% of the students who took the test. This is the all-student group, right? This is the all-student group who took the PSSAs in school year 2018-19. 45.2% of them scored proficient or advanced. You can see that Aronimink came in a little bit below that, Primus even lower than that, and Garrettford at about 39%. So important to note that, again, what this data is showing us is that our students, in terms of their achievement level, are starting below the statewide average. Therefore, we have even more of an opportunity and a desire, a need, to grow students more than just 1 year's worth of growth, and make sure that we give them those prerequisite skills in kindergarten, in first grade, in second grade, so that when they enter third grade and take the state assessments for the first time, they're not starting as far behind as the statewide average as they currently are. Here's the same information, but for English language arts. Again, you can see the comparison of the proficient or advanced students to the statewide average for all 3 schools, and all 3 schools went from the growth measure of being blue or green to all 3 being red, meaning this is an area that is definitely an opportunity for growth for us in terms of overall student achievement, and specifically this data set is measuring the percentage of students proficient or advanced. I just wanted to highlight, I wasn't going to go into all 3 of the plans and take out the goals and action steps, strategies, and professional development plans for each, but they will be posted for public review on the individual schools' websites. They will be, if they have not already, be reviewed at a home and school meeting with the Home and School Association of each of the schools. And as we get new data, they will be amended as well. They will continue to look at this and update the data throughout the course of the school year. Here's a sample reading goal specifically for Aronimink using our measure of academic progress and the 2020 NWEA growth norms. And it's just showing a particular cohort of students, in this case, third grade at Aronimink, and Mr. Rehak and his team's goal of meeting or exceeded the expected student growth norm of 10.5%. Now, they will assess this data. They just took the benchmark fall data for grades 3, 4, and 5, and they're going to take a look at this data, compare the fall benchmark to the winter data that we get, and as a result of that, be able to drill down to specific third grade ELA or reading, and then be able to drill down even further to a cohort of kids for a particular teacher, and then go as far as just drilling down for individual students and seeing where students are, whether or not they are growing at the rate projected as they should be growing based on the normed reference data from NWEA, and then make some instructional decisions as a result of this data as it becomes available to us throughout the course of the school year. Here's a very similar goal, this time not for Aronimink, but for Garrettford, and not for reading, but for mathematics. So Mr. Bridges and his team identified this goal of the 5th grade student group will meet or exceed the 2020 expected student growth norm of 9.61, again, as specified by the norms from the beginning of the year to the end of the year for the Math Map benchmark assessment. Some of the next steps that I already reviewed last month, but it's worth repeating. A lot of our next steps, professional development right now, has really focused and centered around the adoption and implementation of our new resources in ELA, math, science, and social studies. A lot to kind of, to bite off at one time, but Ms. Kelly and her team, the supervisors, the coaches deserve a tremendous amount of credit, as do the teachers, taking this all on, and really, as much as we are excited about these new programs, obviously with new programs, sometimes we see a bit of an implementation dip, layer a pandemic on top of that, and it presents some rather challenging circumstances. However, despite all of that, the team has done a really professional job of getting those programs up and running. Professional development, again, I just mentioned that. We talked about in the past, learning targets, math instructional practices. We continue to partner with the AIM Pathways to Proficient Reading team. We're looking forward to a continued relationship with them to specifically address the science of reading and the important foundational skills of literacy. Specifically, we're targeting our kindergarten and first grade teachers in terms of professionally developing them and the students to make sure, like I said, that the students, by the time they reach third grade and they are taking those state assessments, they are not starting so far behind what that statewide average has indicated. One other change in terms of a curricular strategy is that we have decided to, as many of you know, departmentalize our 4th and 5th grade teachers. They're assigned to specifically teach now either ELA or math, which does allow for that deeper planning and preparation. And really, they can dig in and have a little bit more depth in terms of their planning and prep for those classes. We're continuing our PBIS and social emotional learning initiatives through Lakeside Trauma-Informed Care. I just had a conference call with the International Institute for Restorative Practices just the other day, and while they have not been immune to the impact of the pandemic as a result of having a reduction in personnel and resources, we are continuing our partnership with them, and as much as we would have liked to continue that in person for live sessions, we're going to have to do it virtually, and we have a plan that we're developing for that. Again, I'll be back for a third time to review Hillcrest Elementary School's plan, and I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Manfrey, and then maybe we can address if there's any questions about any of the plans, elementary or secondary, from that point.
Mr. Salerno, thank you very much, and thank you for explaining the new portal and what our principals and our school improvement teams have been doing since late August, September, and October, planning for these school improvement plans. I want to thank Mrs. Simone from Upper Darby High School and her team, and Dr. Alloway at Drexel Hill Middle School and his team for putting together what I think is a pretty comprehensive plan. Just as a reminder, as Mr. Salerno alluded to, a lot of this plan is based on 18-19 achievement and growth data. The Future Ready Index did come out October 16th. We will be presenting that at the November committee meeting to the school board and to the public, but much of these plans are based on 18-19 data, just as a reminder. So this evening, unfortunately for me, I don't have the luxury of kind of doing common threads because we're experiencing this evening two different plans. The high school plan is a high school plan, obviously, and Drexel Hill Middle School is a middle school plan. So I'll be going through these plans as quickly as I possibly can, and we'll start with Upper Darby High School. So as you know, I guess probably about this time last year, I indicated to the board and to the public that Upper Darby High School was designated by the state as a TSI school, which is different than an ATSI school or a CSI school. A TSI school basically is a warning to a school that they are in danger of becoming an ATSI school, which would require plans that were to be approved by the state. A non-title TSI school does not need to have plans that are approved by the state. There's a two-step process that the state takes in identifying schools as TSI schools. The first is about achievement and growth of a specific group of students. Could be students with disabilities, could be economically disadvantaged students, could be any group of students. And then the second piece is about federal indicators and whether or not that specific group of students have met federal indicators. Upper Darby High School was identified due to students with disabilities group meeting the achievement growth profile in step 1 and also some of the federal indicators, which I will review with you now. This is a diagram that indicates that Upper Darby High School falls in the TSI information update under Profile 3. Profile 3 in Step 1 indicates that the school, in this case the group being students with special needs, fell below 22.8%, but greater than 10% in achievement and growth combined in ELA and math. When the state identifies this, the identification process moves on to step 2, which is about federal indicators: graduation rate, English language proficiency, regular attendance, and career standard benchmarks. And for Upper Darby High School, because the graduation rate fell below the state average for this specific group, 67.2%, English language proficiency 3.7%, regular attendance 66.3%, and career standard benchmark 70.6%. Again, this data is for the specific group, students with IEPs, and that is why Upper Darby was designated as a TSI school. School improvement planning process began with a data review, and the data review consisted of a multi-tiered system of support reading intervention data, PVAS data, Keystone Achievement data, and the Future Ready PA Index data. We'll start with Upper Darby High School strengths that were identified by the team. As Mr. Salerno mentioned, most of our schools, Upper Darby High School included, does an extremely good job of growing our students. In fact, Upper Darby High School met 100% growth in literature, Algebra 1, and biology. And just as a reminder, that does not mean 100% of the students grew in those areas. What that means, as defined by the state, is that the average growth of Upper Darby High School students exceeded the predicted growth. So that is why they scored 100 in those areas. Another point of pride for Upper Darby High School is that the career standard benchmark went from 57.9% to 85.9% in 1 year. You will find later in the presentation that that's also an area for growth, because even though it's 85.9%, it still did not meet the statewide average. Reading data that was used, and this is, I think, extraordinary. 250 students out of 471 students who are in reading interventions tested out of those interventions based on data meetings during or by the end of the school year. Areas for growth. As Mr. Salerno mentioned with his 3 non-title schools that he was presenting tonight, achievement continues to be a concern across the district and certainly at Upper Darby High School. Our literature scores were 60.1%, and the state average is 62.1%. Our algebra score was 45.1%, and the state average is 45.2%. So although we were close, we're still not meeting the statewide average. And our biology score was 50.1%, and the statewide average was 66%. English language growth. The statewide average is 31.2%, and we are at 19.4%. Our college and career measures are at 85.9%. As I said before, we see this as a kind of point of pride because we grew so much. However, we're still not meeting the statewide average of 89.8%. Regular attendance, 76.2%, and the statewide average is at 85.8%. And the 4-year graduation cohort is 82.7%, while the state average is 85.6%. Based on those areas of growth, the high school came up with the following goals. Number 1, to ensure consistent and effective instructional practices. Number 2, to ensure the use of school-wide data for growth and achievement. And number 3, to ensure a supportive school environment. And with that, the high school team came up with the following action steps. There is a data team that meets daily here at Upper Darby High School that consists of administrators and reading teachers. School-wide goals are centered around culturally responsive teaching and academic achievement, and teachers meet with administrators about those goals 3 times per year. We have an equity team at Upper Darby High School. Mrs. Simone takes the equity team at Upper Darby High School extremely seriously, and they meet daily. Action research groups at Upper Darby High School include the Code of Conduct, Discipline Team, ELs, ELA, Flipped Classroom, Instructional Technology Support, Math, Family and Student Engagement, just to name a few. Inclusive practices work with the Delaware County Intermediate Unit and Mr. Marshallak's team is continuing so that we can continue focusing on those special education students and provide them with general education instruction with the accommodations they need within the general education classroom. There are general education teachers and special education teachers participating in these workshops. We want to, obviously, instructional leadership is extremely important, and we want to continue to increase the number of learning walks, whether they're virtual learning walks or in-person learning walks, and clinical observations. We want to continue our dual enrollment program in partnership with the Delaware County Community College. We want to continue to take a look at our graduation pathways and scheduling revisions. And we want to do a better job of celebrating our advanced placement students and encouraging additional participants in our advanced placement program. And Mrs. Simone holds an advanced placement night once a year celebrating those students. And finally, we celebrate our College and Career Week yearly. Continuing with action steps, post-secondary Pride Day, we've implemented System 44 and a revised Read 180 program. We have Keystone remediation courses. We continue with our PBIS program and Royal Pride. And we are trying to build capacity in the areas of restorative practices, as once again Mr. Salerno mentioned, and trauma-informed care. And we continue with our PBIS Operation Royal Pride and celebrating students once a month with that. And of course, we have an extremely robust student assistance program at Upper Darby High School. With that, I'll move to Drexel Hill Middle School. The process that Dr. Alloway and his team followed was to build a team and create a shared vision. And they had weekly meetings throughout September. I would say actually the last week in August is when they started. Throughout September and October, they took time, as you'll see, to summarize the strengths and challenges, analyze the strengths and challenges, set goals, design professional development, and create an action plan. As with most of our schools, the strengths at Drexel Hill Middle School is in growth. Most of our groups grew in ELA, and most of our groups grew in math. All of our groups grew in science, and we got 100% in the career and standard benchmarks. Areas for concern: achievement in ELA, achievement and growth in math, and of specific concern at Drexel Middle School is 6th grade math and achievement in science. Continue with areas of growth. Advanced placement scores in ELA and math are well below the state average. And Drexel Hill Middle School's team believes that the number of students excluded from school is a concern. Based on those concerns, the goals are achievement and growth in ELA and reading. It is the hope that in 6th grade, end of the year growth with a 5-point increase in the MAP test, a 4-point increase in the MAP test for 7th grade, and a 3-point increase in the MAP test for 8th grade. And as I said, particular focus on 6th grade in math to achieve 1 year's worth of growth as indicated by PVAS. Academic achievement growth in math, the hope is that 70% of 6th grade students will grow by 8 RIP points on the MAP test and meet a year's worth of growth in PVAS. Behaviorally, and I applaud Dr. Alloway and his team for this goal, they are hoping that they can reduce the number of out-of-school suspensions and code of conduct violations by 50%. In order to do those things, the staff will be using NWEA MAP instructional planning and differentiation tools. We will be targeting sixth grade math teachers for professional development with Mr. Schwartz, the supervisor of math. We will continue, obviously, instructional leadership through learning walks and observations. And behaviorally, as Mr. Salerno had mentioned regarding social and emotional learning at the elementary level, we'll continue with our PBIS lessons and begin to implement those lessons in our citizenship courses during our secondary homeroom. We will continue to attempt to build capacity at both Upper Darby High School and Drexel Hill Middle School as it relates to trauma. And luckily for us, we still have a relationship with Lakeside Neurological, and they are continuing to work with teacher leaders who can professionally develop the staff at both Upper Darby High School and Drexel Hill Middle School on trauma-informed strategies. As far as professional development, again, directed by Mr. Schwartz, teacher coaching, NWEA math development. Specifically, there are reports in NWEA's map that lends itself to really good planning for teachers. The learning continuum, the class report, the class by quadrant. Dr. Alloway is an expert in all of those areas, as are his assistant principals, and they're providing professional development to their teachers in that regard. Also, intensive System 44 professional development, as well as HMH reading interventions. SORTA math intervention professional development, and as I said earlier, trauma team coaching, and the PBIS team-led development and behavioral data meetings. And with that, I'll turn it over to the board for any questions that they may have.
Thank you, Dr. Manfrey, for the detailed information and data. I also would like to thank Mr. Salerno for the elementary data. It looks like I have a couple of questions. The first question is from School Board Member David Neal. Mr. Neal?
Thank you, Ms. Curry. Just a follow-up question for the middle school presentation, Dr. Manfrey. The out-of-school suspensions you hopefully plan to reduce by 50%. Is the admin considering in-school suspension? Is that currently in place?
You know, Mr. Neal, I had this conversation with Dr. Alloway and his team regarding this goal. And the reality of the situation is, and I had this analogy, it's not really about reducing suspensions, which is why I encouraged the team to include code of conduct violations. Because we could artificially reduce the number of suspensions to come up with an alternative punishment, such as in-school suspension. But that's not really demonstrating growth as far as behavior. So the real focus here is about teaching our kids what our expectations are, practicing those expectations, and making sure that we reduce the number of code of conduct violations. So to answer your question in a more concise way, no, we've not really thought about reinstituting an in-school suspension philosophy, because we don't believe that that intervention really works towards changing behavior either.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Board Member Warsavage, please.
Thank you, Mrs. Curry. I was just making mention of some of the wording and the language that we just use, and this is just in general, just as an observation, not necessarily about how some of the information tonight was phrased, but when we use words like punishment, when we're dealing with redirecting energy or redirecting purpose of our students or redirecting that action, I think that's the kind of vocabulary we may as a community want to start embracing. I'm just putting that out there as a note, personal note. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Warsavage. I would also like to say that this is Mrs. Curry, that it's important for us as we do go through these plans that our parents understand what's in the plan. And I would really encourage parents to go through their schools. The home and schools will be sharing this information, And it's really, really important that we be able to understand the plans that are going out for our children in each of our schools. I do also want to agree with School Board Member Warsavage. It's clearly important that when we use the language concerning behavior, that we are looking at in the district improvement plans also with the suspension rates. And I would like to kind of bring that back up if Dr. McGarry can speak to the plans that are in place to improve that particular area.
Mrs. Curry, looking at Dr. McGarry, I'd love to tackle this. We had this conversation last night as part of our University of Pennsylvania Upper Darby Advisory Board meeting. I was in a group with Dr. Council, and I feel really strongly about this issue, that unfortunately the tradition in education, public or private, forever and ever and ever, is that we attempt to change behavior, to Mr. Warsavage's point, through punishment, when the reality of the situation is that we ought to really be looking at the way to change student behavior is through intervention. And I believe very strongly that, as Dr. Green, the author of Lost at School, once said, kids do well if they can. So we need to approach students who struggle behaviorally similarly to the way that we approach students who struggle in mathematics or who struggle in reading, and intervene for them in a different way. Intervening the way we have traditionally intervened is not successful. So what we have done in Upper Darby School District to kind of move that bar forward is work with people like Lakeside Neurological and the Institute for Restorative Practices. But the reality of the situation, in my opinion, and I've been saying this for a long time, is that we need to change people's hearts and minds in our school district and across education about how we go about changing behavior and redirecting, to use Mr. Warsavage's words, redirecting students in a more positive direction. I apologize, Dr. McGarry.
No, it's fine. I mean, I think, you know, in my office, in the conversations that we had, and I appreciate I've had this conversation with Ms. Curry and many board members, and in conversations with other superintendents and parents. You know, we have a tagline in the school district, opportunity, unity, excellence, and the tagline is real. I know some folks talk about the branding in the school district, but this is a prime example of that branding. And who our kids are, who our community is, represents that tagline. And on a personal level, I've been provided a lot of opportunities. My dad has a saying, there's no such thing as a self-made person. And in my life, I was provided opportunities. People were unified around me to be successful. I'm sure like many around me at this table have had that unity, those opportunities, and were pushed to be successful in life. And I think until kids feel successful, until they're provided those opportunities, until they're unified by a community or others around them that are going to help them get there, the idea of attaining excellence seems unrealistic. And we continue to think that through negative reinforcement and through punishment, that every single human being, kids, adults, respond well to that kind of influence. And again, this might not be a popular response, but I think it's that idea of firm, fair, and loving. And if we don't have those things working together, we're never going to reach it. So the response will always be, we've got to provide opportunities. It doesn't mean kids aren't going to be disciplined or questioned for their behaviors, but it's going to be done in a firm, caring, supportive way through opportunities. We're going to be unified in our approach, and then kids need to feel success. Kids will do what they can when they feel they can attain something or succeed. If you feel like a failure, you're told that you're a failure, what do we think we're going to get from kids?
Thank you, Dr. McGarry. I think it's also appropriate to say at this point, the equity work that's being done in this school district and in the community continues to work on those areas and going through the building level. So I just appreciate the administration right now. Dr. Manfrey, thank you for that great response. And Dr. McGarry, I also appreciate it because it's important for parents and the public and our community to hear what's going on over and over again so we can get rid of the explicit biases that exist. And so I think that this conversation is important, and I hope, a shameless plug, I hope the parents will come out to the deep equity conversation tomorrow. It's on the website, so that we can continue this conversation. Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions from the board? Thank you. Seeing none, can we move forward to agenda item 3, please?
Certainly. So agenda item number 3 is just a very quick update on the extension of the comprehensive planning process. I know we recently presented about there was a previous extension, and Department of Education gave districts who were in Phase 2, which is Upper Darby School District, another extension to have the comprehensive plan to be due to the state by November 30th, 2021. So Ms. Kelly and I will be coordinating our team and in the near couple of weeks to get this movement back off the ground. The reason for the extension, again, is to allow teams who might be in a virtual setting or not having meetings, face-to-face meetings, the ability to wait out the virus and see if we can get their teams together face-to-face when it's safe to do so. In addition to everything else that's going on right now with trying to reopen schools, this is one area that they wanted to give a little bit of a break to for school districts in this phase. So we'll get back again when we contact the team, and many of you have been a part of the team on the board, and we will communicate when we'll be meeting next and our next steps in that process very soon. And that's all for agenda number 3.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Marshallek. I appreciate that for that information. And now we are at agenda item number 4.
Okay, this is the last one for tonight, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Kelly, who's our Director of Curriculum, who will go through some curriculum resources for the virtual world.
Good evening, everybody. So tonight we are going to concentrate on seeking approval for some additional curriculum resources or digital curriculum resources for our teachers and students as we continue to navigate through this educational plan. Tonight, I'm going to be looking at presenting elementary resources, which will tie back into Mr. Salerno's presentation on the school improvement plan, so you'll see some direct ties there. I will also do a similar situation with secondary resources, and then a few district resources as well. I'm going to pause after each section, so elementary, secondary, and look for any questions that the board may have at that point. I kept the presentation down to just highlights, knowing that tonight might go a little longer than normal. I wanted to provide just the highlights right now, but we can answer any questions. So the supervisors and the instructional coaches have been working tremendously hard to look for the proper resources that will support our students as well as give our teachers what they need in the classroom. And also, the supervisors are on virtually, so if there's any additional questions that I may not be able to answer, they are on with us through our Google Meet tonight. So to begin, Social Studies Alive is a program that we currently use in our elementary schools. What we would like to do at this point is to look at updating that resource. It's copyright right now, 2010. The digital resources are there, but they're not as easy to access. They're not tied into Schoology. They're harder for teachers to use as well as the students. So what we're looking for tonight is to seek approval for an updated social studies course. This program has digital resources that are easy for students to access. They can use the resource directly on their platform, which also ties, or we could tie it into Schoology for our students to respond to text. Also, there's a focus on primary resources. The stories are told from multiple perspectives. So when Ms. Kenya was working with our instructional coaches and looking at a variety of platforms or different resources and publishers that were out there, she kept in mind our last conversation about how to start to look at materials that are more diverse. How are we going to represent the student groups in front of us? How are our teachers going to get professional development? TCI definitely did a good job at that. This has a copyright of 2021 for the print materials, but the digital resources are available to us right now. It also comes with picture cards, professional development. It's written on appropriate lexile levels, and it has a modern language to it. So all of those pieces made Ms. Kenya and her team feel like this was the best resource for our elementary students at this point. The total cost here is $470,000. Now, I don't want anybody to be alarmed at anything that I'm presenting this evening with the cost. These, right now, we're looking at county CARES funding to cover the cost of these digital resources that I am bringing up tonight. The second item is iRead and a mirror assessment. We're looking at a 3-year adoption here. iRead and a mirror are paired together. Right now, it is a free resource to us through our Into Reading adoption that we implemented 2 years ago. That will expire, the iRead piece, and now it is bundled with a mirror, which is an assessment piece. So if we think back to Mr. Salerno's conversation with young students getting to read, and even Mrs. Mitchell, your question, or how are we going to support students? This assessment and these resources will help do that. So they provide mini interventions for students. What it is, students can talk directly into the computer. It shows their mouth, and it gives them feedback. It gives the teacher feedback on a recording as well, so they'll know where to work with the student. So they could do that part at home right now in this format, or when we're back in the classroom, it could be a format that students are using in small groups while the teacher is working with other children. Right now, this is $179,000, and it's for a 3-year adoption. It does come with professional development, and it does adapt to our student needs. It's traditionally used for students in grades K through 3. At this point, we will look at K through 3, but because we may have gaps in 4 and 5 where students may also need these particular resources or these skills and to build them, we will also look at the students that could maybe benefit from it in that regard also, or in those grade levels. The next item is Mystery Science. Mystery Science is a 2-year subscription. So another change to education will be that the state is bringing out new science standards. And these new science standards will be right now, they're being looked at, they're going for approval in the next few months, and they're hoping for implementation in the next 2 to 3 years. They're hoping for a 2024 adoption, a formal adoption at that point, but as we go through the work right now and to prepare us, we need to start to look at how these shifts can happen. So Beth and her team, or Mrs. Riches, sorry, and her team started to look at how can we start to build our resource bank now in preparation for the new generation science standards and how Pennsylvania will align to those standards. There are short videos here. There are discussions. These are all interactive. We can bring them right into Schoology so students are not logging into different platforms. So they're easy and friendly for students in the elementary schools to use. The cost there for all of our students in grades 1 through 5 for a 2-year subscription is almost $18,000. So that's where we are with the elementary resources. I am going to pause right now to see if there's any questions from any of the board members before I move into the secondary resources.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. I believe Dr. Haig has a question at this point.
Thank you, Ms. Curry. I do. Ms. Kelly, can you clarify? I know you said that that we shouldn't worry about the eye-popping figure on the social studies resource that was at the beginning, but can you clarify? You said that I forget it was CARES funds or other federal funds were paying for these. Can you clarify? Sometimes with I guess I'm not clear on whether the digital resources will have ongoing licensing requirements or things like that. It's not clear to me. Can you clarify which things are sort of all just one-time costs versus ongoing costs?
Sure. So the Social Studies Alive program, is a 6-year adoption. So the $470,000, that is for a 6-year adoption. That is all printed materials. It is all digital resources. It's continuous professional development that will come with that package. The iRead is a 3-year adoption with that, so there's ongoing costs, but it wouldn't come until after that 6-year period or after that 3-year period. Same thing with the Mystery Science, which is a 2-year subscription right now. What we're hoping, or what we're looking at is, with Social Studies Alive right now, we purchase 2010 workbooks So the cost, if we started to look at past that 6-year mark, the cost that we're already putting in for those textbooks would eventually catch up, and you'd be able to renew that 6-year subscription. So we're already paying a yearly cost for workbooks for TCI. Anyway, this would help us with those digital resources and extend to a 6-year subscription right now for this adoption. Does that answer your question?
Well, sort of, maybe, I'm not totally sure. So after that 6-year agreement, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is this on par with what we would, like, are these replacing costs that we're already paying? Is this on par with what we're normally paying? How, after that 6-year period, are we going to be sort of locked into something but not having the funding to maintain it?
Christine, Ms. Kelly, I can answer that if you want. To me, Dr. Haig, the reality is this is similar to the LEG grant funding that we had in the past. These are resources that, through this pandemic and through these additional dollars, that there's funding to encourage us to use this money to survive this pandemic, to increase instruction during a virtual world. And we've been using the money creatively to offset current and future costs. So similar to the LEG funding, the legislative grant funding we received, it feels like, 10 years ago, I don't even know how long ago, 2 years ago, that allowed us to creatively make that use of one-time money for a long-term gain. Ms. Christine Kelly has done the same thing here. This is one-time money that we're having that's actually going to have a significant future offset to budgetary costs, that what normally would have been an issue in the future now is a situation where we're going to be able to kind of wipe our brow for the next couple of years and say that we have these resources in place and not have to have them be a budgetary issue as we develop our budget for the next couple of years. So really it's a creative use of one-time money that we can use right now during the pandemic, but also encourage at-home work and flipping the classroom as we come out of this pandemic. So it's going to offset future budgets, actually.
Thank you, Dr. McGarry, and thank you, Ms. Kelly. That clarifies a lot.
No worries. I definitely think that in us looking for the bright side and the light in this time, this is one of those. So thank you, Ms. Kelly. Are there any other questions from the board on this portion of the presentation? Okay, thank you. Ms. Kelly?
So as we continue to look at the secondary resources, the first piece that I'd like to present and look for approval on is a middle school health textbook. So currently our middle school health textbook is outdated. It doesn't cover drugs and alcohol in the way that maybe it should with vaping and e-cigarettes and all of those pieces that are missing out of the current book that we have. It also talks about mental and emotional health, nutrition and wellness. So Mrs. Riches and her team of PE teachers at both of the middle schools look to find the best resource. It also comes with an e-textbook as well, which our current book does not have. It also has videos and interactive materials materials. It also has some review games for students. So it's more interactive, more current for the situation or for our students today, not even for the situation that we're dealing with. This is a one-time cost for these resources. The cost here is about $58,000. And the digital resources, I believe, are for a 3-year period here. And then we would look at how else we could support this. But what we're finding is to look at the e-resources or to just renew the e-resources here is a significant lesser price than all of the textbooks that we would have to use. So the textbooks would be just in-class resources for students, but they would primarily, since we are one-to-one now, they could be using their device to gain access to the ebooks that they would need, or and the videos. The next piece is a high school textbook, which is a professional field experience textbook. This is a less expensive item, as you can see. This is a smaller group of students that we have at the high school. It's about $877. Again, we're looking for ways to get ebooks in front of our students and to also use this money creatively, as Dr. McGarry said, to help our students. So this book, this resource that Mrs. Riches also looked at had scenarios that reflected the diversity of our students. It also had that companion text with videos and interactive text. It also has a mobile app for students to use to review and look for their vocabulary words and pieces like that. So that was a little bit new and trendy. But this is one of those new textbooks that we will be adopting. Again, it's for a few years. I think it's a two to 3 year, I think it was a 3 year adoption for this as well. Okay. So the last secondary resource, or no, the last two, excuse me, was for Code HS. And this is a computer science and coding platform. It also comes with professional development. This is a 3-year agreement. This cost was $29,000. This is helping our computer science programs at the high school, our AP courses and the coding courses that we offer here. So the teachers reached out. I know that that happens in our math department. So they reached out and they were like, we need something right now. So Rob and his team really worked hard to find something that they could use. We know that the code .org and this Code HS has a lot of materials that teachers can use. So they were using it prior to the shutdown, and then they made it free, of course, and now there is a cost associated. So that's what you see in this reflection right here. The last piece is called Kami. And Kami is a PDF or a markup tool. It's a version of almost Adobe Acrobat. It's for education. It connects to Schoology, so it makes it a little bit easier for our teachers to use with a lesser price tag than an Adobe would be for a per license piece. This is just for the high school. They were the ones that really said we need something to be able to interact with the students as we're looking at not just worksheets, but how to mark up text and pieces like that. So this was a 1-year cost. This would be something that if we thought that we should continue this would be something that we would have to budget for next year. And this has a price tag of $12,000. So they are the secondary resources. Again, I'm going to pause to see if there's any questions here. I know this is a lot of information and a lot of resources all at one time. Okay.
Yeah, I just have a quick one regarding code. Can you explain that again? You said they was using it before the pandemic, and then they stopped, and then they're starting. Can you just explain that again? I'm sorry.
So right at the closure, they made a lot of resources free. So code.org made this as a free resource. I'm sorry for not explaining that properly. So now that we are past that free trial zone and the 90-day extension and everything else, companies are starting to reach out and say, hey, what I need, there's now a price tag.
Right.
So this
Okay.
is one of those pieces that there's a price tag now associated with it.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, President Brown. Are there any other comments or questions on the secondary resources at this time? Seeing none, Mrs. Kelly?
Okay, and then the last two are district resources. So, I think in July, maybe August, I came and asked for permission to, or approval to buy Nearpod. And Nearpod has sparked a lot of interest throughout the district. And now K through 2 wants to use it, and 9 through 12 wants to use it. And it's very interactive. It really helps with engagement in the classroom. It ties right into Schoology, so it's seamless on that end. So right now, I'm asking to extend it to match the 3-year subscription that we already had approval on for 3 through 8 for our K through 2 teachers and our 9 through 12 teachers. It incorporates a lot of different pieces. You can poll your class very quickly. It has collaboration boards, virtual reality, field trips, and things like that. So definitely interactive, definitely helps with the engagement for our students. So to match up the 2 contracts, the company was very good at working with us to bring on K through 12 and 9 through, K through 2 and 9 through 12 into our current contract. It was an additional $96,000 there. And then the last piece is ClassLink. And ClassLink is a single sign-on solution. So a few weeks back, we discussed this originally. Mr. Helinski, as well as my office, have been working together to figure out an easier way for students to navigate to all of these sites. Because part of this is that once you put in a new resource, how do children get to it? How do parents help children get to it? And it becomes a lot to have to navigate. So ClassLink is a platform that brings it all together and customizes your dashboard of your computer so that when students open their Chromebooks, they'll see the icons that they need, and it's a single sign-on. I sort of parallel to my phone and how my apps look maybe different than Dr. Manfree's, and how I could just click on it and it has me signed in because of things that I've done in the past. So what we'll be able to do is customize that landing page for K through 2 students, 3 through 5 students, 6 through 8, and we can build it how we want to. So Mr. Helinski and I have been working with our teams to figure out the best way to build that. Now, this is a 2-year agreement with this price tag, so this would be one of those situations that after this 2-year agreement, if we found it valuable, we would have to figure out how to budget this internally. What we are finding is, though, that some of the benefit that's coming out of this is that it has rostering features for Mr. Helinski and his team. It also has analytical reports for us, so if we're starting to see a dip in usage, instead of me polling my teachers, I can pull a report and say, okay, I can see who is using Nearpod, I can see who is using Into Reading, I can see who's using iRead. So it generates a report for us as administrators as well, so we can make sound decisions on what to move forward with or what maybe we have to abandon and look for a different resource to supplement. So the last one is Unique Learning. This is a product that we have been using. This extends our program, or our subscription, excuse me, to a 3-year subscriptions. It is standard aligned for students with complex learning needs. So Mr. Marshallak and his team use this to support the programs in his special ed. So that's the Unique Learning piece. So I know that was a lot. I tried to summarize it at the end so that you would know what we were looking for approval on. But if I can answer any questions at this point from the district level or going back to elementary and secondary, I can if anybody has any.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. There are quite a few comments and questions. First, we would have Dr. Haig.
Thank you, Ms. Curry. I just wanted to throw in a thank you to Ms. Kelly because I have 2 kindergartners at home and people keep asking me how is virtual kindergarten going with 2 of them at home. And I just have to give a shout out to the kindergarten team at Westbrook Park. They're doing a spectacular job, but I especially want to thank Ms. Kelly for Nearpod because I know that that's going to be such an exciting thing for my son, especially. I know he's going to love it, and I just think so many kids who aren't fully engaged right now are going to be more excited when they have these great resources. So thank you.
I just wanted to reiterate what Meredith just said. Getting these creative resources in place for our students is a game changer, and I'm looking forward to seeing Upper Darby soar after this.
The supervisors and the instructional coaches, like I said, have been working tremendously hard to be creative and to find the proper resource that's going to help us move forward. So they've done a tremendous job.
Ms. Kelly, you mentioned that you and Mr. Helinski looked at ClassLink and some other single sign-on solutions. Can you shed any light on the other ones that you considered as a single sign-on? I know there's a lot, some that I'm aware of, so I'm just curious to know of other ones that you looked at.
So what we looked at was what surrounding districts are also using, and where we sometimes get that outside support, maybe, the just pick up the phone kind of support that you sometimes need. So we looked at Clever, we looked at ClassLink. What we found was ClassLink is used by many people around us, over 25 districts, like right in the area, in Chester County, Montgomery County, Delaware County, and we thought that right now that was the best solution for us.
Okay, I agree with that. I'm aware of Clever, and I think ClassLink is the better option, so I just wanted to know what other ones you considered. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, President Brown. Mr. Helinski?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Curry. Mr. Brown, one other thing we did look at, and you had brought to my attention about a year or so ago, was the VM Workspace ONE. So I did compare that, and that was a lot pricier than the ClassLink option, which that's more geared towards the business world than it is for school districts. And so ClassLink seemed to be the best feature for us for all around abilities.
Just made my night. I'm glad you remembered that one that I sent you, and I'm glad you looked at it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Helinski. I have a comment about something that I had actually talked with Ms. Kelly about in a meeting, and just want to bring it to the forefront. I'm so happy and excited that we are able to get these resources for the district. Most concerning is my own household in the elementary school. I brought to the attention of Ms. Kelly and some other administrators that our students right now, especially the elementary students, are expected to work on the computer since we're virtual, and have difficulties, many of them, because they don't know necessarily how to type, because that's not a skill that's really taught necessarily until, in some cases, high school for children on the public school level. I know when I was in school, I didn't learn typing until high school. And now that we have computers and phones, our children know how to text, but not necessarily knowing how to type. So, Ms. Kelly, I just wanted to reiterate that. And I know that you are doing the research to be able to bring these wonderful resources. I just would like to see some type of typing app or some type of resource for children who don't know how to type to be included for their additional resources.
So, Mrs. Curry, my team had a conversation about this today because we said we need to look at, and next month we will bring something forward, but we wanted to look at how a library is used that is part of our library standards. So we want to make sure that since the students do have devices, how we can start integrating that as a part of our library instruction. So my team met today and we did start to hash that out and what that could look like as we are moving forward.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Ms. Kelly. So at this time, I believe that is the end of all of the agenda items. Are there any other comments from the board? Vice President Mitchell.
I just wanted to reiterate what Gina said. Having some sort of typing application will be a game changer for our IEP students as well as they access the curriculum in a different way. So I hope we can get that in place sooner than later.
Thank you, Vice President Mitchell. Any other board members with comments or questions at this time? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much for this in-depth education and pupil services information. At this time, we will take public comment. Are there any public comments that are in line for these agenda items?
Yes, there are, Ms. Curry. The first comment is from Kathleen Kenny, located at 504 Wild Avenue in Drexel Hill. The comment was received on the 27th at 8:48 a.m. via email regarding agenda item number 1 from the Education and Pupil Services agenda meeting. Comment begins, my daughter attends Upper Darby High School and is enrolled in the developmental program and has intervention classes. This week and previous weeks, some of her teachers were out. Substitute teachers were assigned. However, some of these teachers did not teach. They had the children do asynchronous learning on Schoology. This is not providing FAPE to our children with needs. If the district is planning on continuing virtual learning, why can't the teachers teach from home? By allowing teachers to teach from home, it will prevent our most vulnerable children from falling further behind due to untrained substitutes in special education/intervention classes. End of comment. And I'm aware that Dr. McGarry responded to this parent via email.
Thank you, Ms. Buford. Are there any other comments from the public?
There's a comment from Tara Lacey, located at 1127 Cobb Street in Drexel Hill. This comment was received on the 27th at 2:35 p.m. via email regarding agenda item number 1. Comment begins, I couldn't help but notice that while viewing the new return to school procedures, quote unquote, video yesterday, that the children are sitting in class in front of their computers with headphones on. Is this how it will be for our students who return under hybrid? How is this beneficial to our children if they are doing the same thing at school that they are currently doing at home? I was under the impression that the hybrid model was allowing our children some much-needed person-to-person interaction. I believe that this information should have been brought to all of us parents before we made the decision to stay home or send our children in. With this new information, I now feel that the risks outweigh the benefits. Thank you for your time. End of comment. I understand this comment was handled by Dr. McGarry via email, and also Dr. McGarry addressed this during the meeting.
I'd mentioned this earlier. The wonderful video that we put out demonstrating our plans to return students for in-person instruction. In some of the video, we had students that were in classrooms. As a reminder, we do have students attending schools right now for some support because we have an essential workers program for some of our parents who need, that are in nurses, the medical profession, any other profession that we put out there that's considered an essential worker. We've offered that opportunity for their students to come in, use the internet, log in, and attend their classes virtually. So those students that are in the video are students that are attending our essential workers program, and their students have headphones on and a computer in the classroom so they can engage in the instruction that's happening virtually right now. If students were to return for in-person instruction, we would not be asking them to keep their headphones on and follow the lesson virtually. They could have their computer out and type, since we've been talking about typing so much, and take notes in the computer, which we would encourage, but they don't have to be following the lesson synchronously, nor will they have to have headphones on.
Our next comment is from Liz Philman, located at 5224 Fairhaven Road in Clifton Heights. Comment received on the 27th via email regarding agenda item number 1. Comment begins, our schools need to open. These kids need face-to-face school teaching, especially at the elementary levels. I understand levels are rising, but children are not spreading it a lot to adults. Our kids need to get in-person, face-to-face instruction. They need to be given a chance to have slightly normal school. Thank you for your time. End of comment.
Thank you, Mrs. Buford. Are there any other comments for the agenda items mentioned?
Yes, Ms. Curry. The next comment is from Anna Halloran, located at 7214 Penarth Avenue in Upper Darby. Her comment was received on the 27th at 6:58 p.m. via email regarding agenda item number 1. Comment begins, I'm just curious, where's the requirement for teachers to be in the building coming from? And why is it a requirement? Is it state level, district level? If students are staying virtual, why would teachers have to be in the buildings? This seems like an unnecessary risk for teachers. Thank you. End of comment. The next comment is from Dawn Maxfield, located at 2217 South Harwood Avenue in Upper Darby. Comment was received on the 27th at 7:32 p.m. via email regarding agenda item number 1. Comment begins, if staffing issues is the main reason that schools cannot open under a hybrid plan, is it safe for parents to assume that we will be fully virtual for the remainder of the year? Also, is it possible to bring back the youngest children, kindergarten through 2nd grade, considering that virtual learning can be so challenging for them? End of comment. I understand Dr. McGarry responded to this parent via email.
Yes, we will continue to look at ways that we can bring back in, as we discussed earlier, specific special education programming and students in either kindergarten through 1st, kindergarten through 2nd, and then kindergarten through 3rd, and then expand to the 5th grade. Again, we are continuing to look at ways that we can staff our schools. The reason why we need teachers in our buildings is we still have educational state requirements that we have to operate, and we believe it's important that our teachers are in our buildings at this point in time.
Our next comment is from Kim McDevitt, located at 100 South Church Street in Clifton Heights. The comment was received on the 27th at 7:47 p.m. via email regarding agenda item number 1. Comment begins, Please explain why special education is low incidence considering they are less likely to wear masks and socially distance. It is not feasible for staff to be socially distant with these students and still do their job in any realistic capacity. Thank you. End of comment. Dr. McGarry also responded to this parent via email.
I did respond to Mrs. McDevitt. I provided Mrs. McDevitt with the following response. We recognize that students in our special education programming, especially in low incidence programs, will need a lot more patience and encouragement and practice in practicing these skills, and we have a plan to encourage those skills, developing those skills with our students in our autistic support program, our life skills program, and our multi-disabled students. And that as a result, we recognize that our students will not meet 100% compliance in those programs. While we'll encourage 6 feet of social distancing and wearing of masks, our goal will also be further protect our staff. We've discussed this many times. Teachers will have a face shield, an N95 mask, gowns, gloves, and plexiglass when necessary.
And our final comment for this agenda item is from Angel Carroll, located at 4202 Garrett Road in Drexel Hill. Comment was received on the 27th at 8:12 p.m. via email regarding agenda item number 4. Comment begins, I wanted to suggest looking into using typing.com. I use typing.com for my son and my students. Here are a few that I found, and she mentions some other resources. Alpha Munchies, Animal Typing, and Typing Fingers. End of comment. That concludes our comments for the Education and Pupil Services agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Buford. I believe School Board Member Leah Dawes has a question.
Thank you, School Board Director, Mrs. Curry. I guess this question I'll direct it at Dan. If you could just clarify, we have teachers currently coming in the building. We talked about not the decision to remain virtual, having a great deal of impact on the teacher's ability or teachers using their benefits to not come in, our ability not to be able to provide adequate number of substitutes. Can you just describe the difference between a teacher coming in the building now and teachers being able to come in the building now, teaching virtually, versus teaching a hybrid method and them needing to maybe not be available to teach in person?
Yeah, I think, look, there's a lot of concern and frustration. I appreciate the question. That I know that following tonight there may be some staff and maybe some supportive family members in the public who will email and send questions saying they don't think that staff should have to be in our schools. But let me first say this, that it's time to get back to these jobs, and that we're supporting staff who have health conditions or medical conditions, and that those accommodations within reason, they're called hardships for school districts, what we can financially do, we're able to try to pull off. But we can't go beyond the hardship, what qualifies for a hardship for that staff, because it's a financial issue for the school district. So we're trying to support the close to 50 staff members in that situation. What's interesting in some of this is that there are some staff members who feel that they should be given the same accommodation without the same needs. So there are staff who might not have underlying health conditions who want to work from home still too. And we understand that this is difficult and it's tough to manage, but we are important service, and we need to get back to work, and we need to open our schools, and we're supporting and encouraging our teachers to do it. I just talked about that in many of the school districts that have opened, the mitigating factors are working. It's the outside behaviors that are not working. So we still have state requirements, state testing. We still have a lot of important issues that we still have to undertake, and we need our staff to pull that off. So we will require teachers to report to work and to continue to teach from our building, so that when we do continue to work toward bringing students back in, we're all prepared to do that. There is still an important preparation taking place, that teachers being in these schools are still learning how to navigate the new 6 feet of social distancing with themselves, not carpooling together, how do they eat lunch together, we can't be closer, 6 feet with a mask for a period of time. So the more we practice these things, the more we become familiar teaching from our classrooms with this new technology, the better we're going to be. I was in a conversation today, Ms. Dawes, and I appreciate you coming back to me, where I heard that the reality is that we will most likely be in a hybrid situation potentially through to next fall. So at some point in time, we have to get ourselves ready to get back into school with students. And we're being patient and working with everybody to pull that off. But we're not in a situation where we're going to continue to let all of our staff work from home.
Thank you. Just wanted to offer that question so we can have a bit of clarity around the impact of the teachers, and I appreciate you going a step further to say how long we'll be in this. There is no promise of a cure for COVID. This is COVID. This is COVID. There's no promise of a cure. There's a vaccine, and we're not first in line for it. So what does that look like for our community? Thank you.
Add to that this community, this school district, Beverly Hills Middle School and Drexel Hill Middle School, the superintendent and the administration will be practicing running pods so that when a vaccine potentially becomes available, the school district will become a focal point to help administer on a mass level when that becomes available. Again, the school district will step up and have to run that. But you're right, we don't know when that's going to happen. The medical advice right now is we're probably going to be in this situation for the foreseeable future.
Thank you, Dr. McGarry. Thank you, School Board Member Dawes, for that exchange. I appreciate that, and so does the board. At this time, we are going to review the agenda items for the Education and Pupil Services Committee meeting, and I appreciate everyone's patience and detail to the information that went out tonight. So as we go into the agenda items, we have 4 agenda items this evening. The first one was informational, and that was the 2020-2021 phase reopening of schools, where Dr. McGarry spoke about what's going on with the reopening and where we stand as far as going back, not going back with the hybrid and bringing the students back in who are in the special needs area. Dr. McGarry, in reviewing this particular agenda item, can you please address the reasoning that the board will not be voting on this particular agenda item tonight and why it's informational?
Yes. The board has already approved a phased reopening health plan. And in the plan itself, it outlines the different color codes or the different process that we would have to follow. And really, it provides the superintendent the discretion to move in and out of those phases given the guidance at the time. I'm simply providing an update to the public following our health plan that we are in a situation where we're going to remain virtual, and then we will decide again at a later point in time when we believe we can move into one of the other more flexible options that we have. And reviewing this with many people in our solicitor, I have the authority to move us in and out of those based on the guidance of the health plan and the flexibility the health plan provides.
Thank you, Dr. McGarry, for that explanation. Agenda item number 2 was non-Title I school level plans. Board action is required this evening on that. I would like to poll the board to see if they would like to move it forward for a vote.
Yes.
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 Okay, it sounds like that was the majority. Is anyone opposed? Okay, so we're going to move that one forward for board action. Agenda item number 2. Agenda item number 3 was informational, the comprehensive plan timeline update, and that was given by Mr. Marshalek. And there will be more information coming forward for the board and the public on this timeline. And lastly, but not least, certainly, with all the digital resources, board action is required for the all of the digital resources for the elementary and secondary levels that Miss Christine Kelly did so well tonight. And I would like to know if the board members would be moving this forward for a vote. Please answer by saying yes.
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 Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, anybody opposed? Okay, it looks like everybody is in agreement of that. Looks like that concludes our Education and Pupil Services meeting. I would like to refer back to President Brown at this time. Thank you, everyone, for your patience.
All right, a motion is in order for the adjournment of the Education and Pupil Services Committee meeting.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Meeting adjourned.